by non-obvious?
Yeah, so these are founders who are often overlooked by traditional private equity or venture investors. Oftentimes they're women, underrepresented people, but diversity, as it turns out, comes in 32 flavors, and traditional venture has celebrated pattern recognition in many ways, and we think that has caused a gap in the marketplace, one that I feel well positioned to serve.
So you've already made 5 investments for companies led by women, 3 companies led by Latino women.
Yes.
Tell us about these companies.
Sure. So far, we, as you said, made 5 bets, and 4 of them, I'm proud to say, are led by women. 2 of them are actually a woman CTO and a woman CEO. These companies are all over the world. One of them is out of Puerto Rico, another one is out of Oakland, and another one is out of Barcelona. And all of these technology solutions are serving markets or opportunities that have been either overlooked or underserved by technology, especially recently.
Now, you worked at Facebook, as have some of the other investors at your new fund.
Yes.
How is that informing where you're placing your bets? I mean, is there any thesis behind social networking or messaging or whatnot?
Sure. So we are very much a founder market fit thesis. Ours is one of sort of network discovery. So one thing I learned at Facebook is a large part of Facebook's success is premised on their ability to just relentlessly execute. And so we look for people who really value execution, but we also look for founders who value diversity and inclusivity in company building and look to build teams, especially early on, that are cognitively and intellectually diverse. And we think our networks as founders and a broader group of LPs, which, as you mentioned, include Melinda Gates and Reid Hoffman, several of my early colleagues from Facebook, really lend themselves to helping these early teams build not only skills and networks, but people who think and process information differently.
Now, Facebook is having a lot of problems, as you may have noticed. It seems like scandal after scandal, now privacy issues, dealing with what goes up, what comes down on Facebook. What do you, having worked at Facebook for a very long time, and I'm sure watched it from afar, you also joined a messaging company that tried to compete with Facebook. What do you think is the driving force of some of these issues?
Well, as you mentioned, I haven't been at Facebook for quite some time. As someone who consumes news, I certainly have noticed some of the issues. But I have a tremendous amount of faith in the management team to actually attack these things. And I think they do so in a really thoughtful and diverse way of thinking and approaching the issues that they're facing. Facebook was very, very young when I was there, and we were thinking a lot about scaling and driving growth. And now it's a very, very powerful company with broad reach. And yeah, they've got some problems that they've got to face, but I have a lot of faith in their ability to do so.
Chris Hughes, co-founder of Facebook, wrote a much talked about op-ed in the New York Times where he argues that Facebook should be broken up, and he also sort of says the opposite of what you say about the management team. He said, Mark's influence is staggering, far beyond that of anyone else in the private sector or government. He surrounded himself with a team that reinforces his beliefs instead of challenges them. Mark's power is unprecedented, un-American, and it's time to break up Facebook. What's your reaction to that?
Well, to be honest, I was so heads down trying to launch my fund that I was aware of it, but I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about it. And I'm also not an expert in antitrust, so I think there's an interesting debate going on. It's probably good that it's being debated, but I don't have a strong point of view.
Well, you do have experience trying to disrupt social networking and messaging. And do you think that Facebook, having WhatsApp and Instagram, can be disrupted? Do you think that a startup out there can be the next social networking platform or the next messaging platform, given your experience trying to do the work that you did before you started your...
Sure, I do actually. I mean, actually, two examples of companies we've recently invested in are what I would call vertical social networks. So Paw Scout, which focuses on pet owner communities, as well as a company called Booksloth, which focuses on readers and people who love books. And I actually think people still want to connect, and that people will leverage technology to connect. They might do so in a more vertical way. That's a bet we're making, and so I am hopeful that we will be disruptive in some ways to Facebook and other big social media platforms with the investments that we make.
Do you find that companies are making different choices about privacy, some of these new companies, than perhaps Facebook and other companies made in the early days?
Certainly, but Facebook and some of our brethren back in the day were actually defining what social media was, and now we have a better sense as a community, as a society, for what social media is. I think nowadays with GDPR and other sort of privacy policy, both abroad and here, certainly the companies that we will be investing in have to think about it in a different way than Facebook and Friendster and Twitter did when they were getting going.
Now, in running your fund, I'm sure you could have joined a number of venture capital funds. Everybody's looking to hire talented women investors now, and you decided to start your own instead. With things like All Raise, Backstage Capital, which has explicitly said we're investing in women, Black, and gay founders. Yep. Why do you think there's still an opening? What are they not addressing that you are going to address?
Sure. Well, actually, Bloomberg did a great piece the other day about just the numbers, and one of the things that really drew me to Melinda Gates was her leadership on frankly, the single-digit percentages of women and underrepresented people who own these businesses. So we've got a long, long way to go. We're not a quota-driven fund, but we are as a woman-led fund and group of people who represent fundamentally and by definition a different set of networks. We're one of a small number of new entrants to the marketplace, and for me, I was really focused on systems change. So if you think about how systems change, it's a matter of coverage of what's wrong with the system, the incumbents actually doing something incremental, hiring more diversity decision makers, and that's good, but you also need new entrants. And I felt really, really importantly that I wanted to be a new entrant and push the system in a direction I'd like to see it go. I think, I don't know Arlen, and I don't know some of these other folks, but my sense is that they probably have a similar mission, and there's a lot of work to be done before we're at, as you well know, before we're in a place where, frankly, the best entrepreneurs are getting the looks that they deserve from capital.